welcome to my channel. My name is Tina Zink and I am an independent demonstrator with Stampin' Up! And I am very excited to share a super popular card that seems to be everywhere right now. It's called a slimline card, and it's just a different size card, really fun to play with and create with. So for today's card, I am using the Love of Leaves stamp set, which is the same set I used in my last video. So I'm having lots of fun creating with this, but I am going to use the rock and roll technique with a little twist. So let's get stamping. So for this card, as I mentioned in my introduction, I am using the Love of Leaves stamp set, and I am also using our Gilded Autumn Specialty Designer Series paper, which is absolutely gorgeous. So I am making these cards. I'm actually making two of them because I am going to a party tonight with a couple of my friends who are celebrating birthdays. So I'm going to make both their cards at the same time. And the slimline card measurements I'm going to be using, which vary. If you do a search, you're going to see different measurements for this card, but what I am going to be doing is a 7 by 8 3/4. So along the 11-inch side, I'm going to move this down to 8 3/4, then spin it around and cut it at 7. Now I'm going to line this up at 3.5 and score. So this is going to be the base of my card. So I'm just going to do that again with the second one. Cut it at 8 3/4 by 7 and score at 3.5. Now I'm taking my Designer Series paper and I'm going to cut at 3 1/4. So slide this over to 3 1/4 and spin it around and cut it at 8.5. Okay, so there's one strip. Now the next card I want to go landscape, so I'm going to cut it this direction at 3 1/4. So all my pumpkins are going in the right direction. And trim this down at 8.5. And then go ahead and put these onto my card bases. Okay, so I've got my landscape and I've got my portrait size. So I'm going to set those aside. Now I have a piece of Blackberry Bliss and I'm going to cut this to measure 5.5 by 2.5. Save this piece for another card base. Spin this around. 2.5. 2.5. Now I'm cutting my Fairy Vanilla to measure 4.5 by 2 1/4. I'm doubling all these pieces because I'm making two cards at once. So if you were just making one card, you would of course only need one piece that measures 5.5 by 2.5 and one piece that measures 4.5 by 2 1/4. Now I'm cutting my crumb cake to measure 4 1/4 by 2. Now I have all my pieces of cardstock cut for both cards. So the colors I'm using are Cajun Craze because that is one of the colors in this beautiful Designer Series paper. I'm using Blackberry Bliss and I'm using Crumb Cake, so I can pull all the colors in to these stamps. So these stamps I've been using the same technique that I'm about to show for other cards. So they're a little bit stained, which is fine. So I'm going to show you the basic rock and roll technique first. So all you do is you ink it up with your first color, and going into a darker color, you're just going to lightly roll the edges and stamp down, and then you get the two tones. But here's what I like to do. First of all, I need to clean my stamp. You need to clean your stamp every time so that you're not contaminating the lighter ink pad with the darker ink pad. So I'm going to do the same thing, Cajun Craze, and then roll the edges into the Blackberry Bliss, and then lightly mist with water. So I'm just using an old Stampin' Mist bottle, but I do have our Stampin' Misters. I just often already have ink already mixed in with the water, so I just keep this handy with just plain water. So now that I've misted this with water, I'm going to stamp down and hold it down just for a moment so that the ink and the water absorbs into that cardstock, and then watch the magic. Look how that blends together. So I'm going to stamp different sentiments on these cards. So for one, I'm going to stamp "You Make the World a Better Place." So I'm going to go ahead and stamp that first, just to make sure I have room for the other leaves. So I'm going to emboss this in gold. And set that with the heat tool. All right, I want to get a couple more leaves on there. That gold looks beautiful. It's going to pull out the gold in that Designer Series paper too. I want a different shape first, so let's do that one. Now this time I'm going to go into Crumb Cake and then my Cajun Craze. So just roll around the edges. To turn the camera back on, but I just stamped another leaf, and this one here, and I stamped it in Crumb Cake first and then Blackberry Bliss, and then just inked it up there. And I'm gonna squeeze in this one here, just a little tip. So I'm gonna do this one a little bit differently. I'm gonna use all three, so I'm only gonna be using the tip, but I've stamped it into my Crumb Cake, and now I'm gonna roll it into my Cajun Craze, and now I'm going to roll it again into the Blackberry Bliss and mist. And really not much is going to show, but it's going to be enough to make it pretty. Almost hate to waste the rest of that beautiful image, but look, it's so nice. Now because I like to work in odd numbers, I have 4 leaves on there, so I am going to want a 5th. So I am just going to use the tip of this one. So I'm going to go into my, let's see, let's go back into the Cajun Craze, and I'm just going to add a little bit of the Blackberry Bliss, just a tiny bit because there's not much space for this. And I'm going to put this one right here like so. From the Waterfront stamp set, I love this image right here. So it looks like splatters. So I have that here, and I'm going to stamp that in my Crumb Cake. It looks like it's dirty, but it's not. That's just from odds and sods I've played with. So I'm just stamping full strength, and then I'm going to stamp right on top without re-inking. This way I get the 2 different tones of ink in there. All right, you know what's next? Maybe Champagne Shimmer Mist, which I have mixed with my rubbing alcohol, so I don't want to get that on my ink pads. So I'm just gonna mist, and that, when it dries, is gonna be all shimmery and beautiful. So I'm gonna set this aside to dry, and now I'm going to stamp the next Crumb Cake piece. So this time I'm gonna use this image here and inking it with my Crumb Cake. And now I'm going into my Blackberry Bliss, mist with water, and stamp it down. And as that dries, all those colors are just going to blend into each other. Isn't that fun? All right, now I need to stamp my sentiment again before I add any more leaves. This time I'm going to stamp Life's a Beautiful Journey. Now, really, it's a good idea to stamp the sentiments first and work around them, but I haven't been doing that. First mark. My desk, you guys, is so loaded with paraphernalia outside of the camera range. It's crazy. Stamp it down. I love that. All right, I have to squeeze in some more stamps, which is going to be tricky-licky because there's not as much room on here. But where there's a will, there's a way. All right, this time I am going into the Cajun Craze and more of the Blackberry Bliss. And I'm getting covered with ink, but that is part of the fun. Stamp that down there. That one had a lot of Blackberry Bliss, but that's okay. And then this time I'm gonna go into Crumb Cake and Cajun Craze. So my guy is out cutting our front lawn right now, so you may be hearing that in the background, and if so, sorry about that. And let's stamp this one down here. That one's just gonna squeeze in. Now I am not gonna add any more. I'm just gonna keep that at the 3 and then grab my splatter and my crumb cake and just add that randomly. Champagne Shimmer Mist. All right, let's stick these on. I just ran out. That's all right. We'll use some glue. This one's gonna go on here. Now this one, I have to decide if I want my ribbon going that way or that way. Ooh, it's a tough call. I'm gonna go this way. So this beautiful ribbon is from the Forever Greenery combo trim pack. So I'm going to put that on. Now, for this one, I took the same ribbon and I dyed it. I'm going to show you how I did it. Now, there's a few ways you can do this. You could take the ink pad and swipe it right across and let it dry. You can take your marker, do the same thing, swipe right across, let it dry. Or if you're doing quite a bit, take your Cajun Craze ink refill, add a few drops to the water, and depending on how many drops you add is how dark this will be. And then you can take a spoon, you can take a knife, you can take your bone folder. As you can tell, this one's very well loved. And then just stir that all together. And then you just simply take your ribbon and put it in. Now this particular ribbon doesn't want to absorb the water. So I have found you really have to squish it in there. And it starts picking up the color. So you just keep working it. And then all I do is I wring it out and set it aside to dry. You can also use your heat tool to speed it up. But this is a great way when you want to do a whole bunch of ribbon and you want to color it. You don't want fairy vanilla. You might want red. You might want green. See? It's colored. How cool is that? So, I have already done this, so I'm going to set this aside to dry. And you can leave it to dry so it dries kind of crinkly, or you can smooth it out and then just set that aside to dry. And the trick for me is always finding a spot for my ribbons to dry that my little kitty can't get a hold of. So this is already dry. So this is going to go on this card. Could have dyed this so that it was darker, but if you look at this designer series paper, it's got the lighter Cajun Craze. So this, I think, Matches beautifully. So I absolutely love using this glue, but if you ever get any on your fingers, you know how sticky it is and how hard it is to get off. So I'm going to show you a little trick. I take our Stays On cleaner, this is a brand new one, and just rub that on your fingers and it literally takes that glue off. And then just wipe that off. Just kind of rub it in. And you can feel the glue kind of rolling up. And just wipe it off. And that is the easiest way I have found to get that glue off your fingertips. Okay, let's bring these back in. Let's make some bows. So I have one of these gadgets that my girlfriend gave me a few years ago. I absolutely love it for making bows. It's just pegs, and I use it a lot. So her husband made this, and then my guy made a bunch for me to give to my Stamp Club girls last year or the year before, maybe the year before, because it's pretty handy. But if you don't have one of these, you can just make a bow however you like. And then I'm going to trim the ends. All I'm doing is this is tricky, I'm wrapping it around. I'm going to try to hold this in place. This goes underneath and over, and then I just make a little loophole and pull it through. And depending on how close or how far apart those pegs are determines on how big your bow is going to be. And actually it's easier to trim the edges when it's still on the contraption. Here, slide it off, and it's another perfect bow. So that one's gonna go on like that. So I could use glue dots, but I'm gonna use a strip of tear and tape. Okay, now I'm taking some gold twine, which is also part of that Forever Greenery, and I'm just gonna make a bow. I don't need my handy dandy gadget because it's just twine. And I'm doing this because I want to pull out more of the gold from the card. And I'm gonna tap the end so that it frays. And when I was making a couple of these earlier, I did put a pearl in the middle and I didn't care for it. So you can try, if you decide to make this card yourself at home, you can add a pearl, but I don't know. I love my pearls and my bling, but I didn't care for it too much. Are these looking pretty? So the fronts are done. Now I'm going to cut some fairy vanilla and put it on the inside of the cards for the sentiment. So I'm going to cut the fairy vanilla to measure 3 1/4 by 8 1/2. So on one of the cards, I'm going to stamp Adventure Awaits, which is this one. So I'm going to stamp that one kind of up near the top because I'm still going to stamp a happy birthday on here as well. And that one's going to get stamped right there. And my gold powder. All right, so I'm just going to use the happy birthday from Here's a Card stamp set. Now I am going to stamp this leaf, which is the only of the 5 leaves in this set that I didn't use, and I really love this one. So let's bring in the crumb cake. I'm gonna do all 3 for this one. So crumb cake, Cajun Craze, and Blackberry Bliss, and Mist. And because I'm misting over my paper, I should mention, I'm getting splatters. I don't know if the camera's picking it up. I am so okay with that. I love that look. So I'm gonna do that this way. And I don't think I'm getting a whole bunch of the Cajun Craze on this one. No, but that's all right. And there's a little extra water in there. I'm just gonna let it dry as it is and do the same thing. I'm going in with the oak leaf, and this time I'm gonna do the Cajun Craze and the Blackberry Bliss Mist. I'm gonna do 3 leaves on here total. My gosh, it's gonna be a different look every time. Okay, this time I'm gonna use Crumb Cake and Cajun Craze, no Blackberry Bliss. I love how it's swirling. And now we're gonna go with this guy and Cajun Craze and Blackberry Bliss. So these are ready to go on to the cards. It goes on here. And do you realize the mistake that I made, you guys? I made a mistake. This card is going that way. My sentiment is going that way. So I need to fix that. So I'm going to save this piece for another card, and I'm going to quickly make another piece. All right, we got it fixed. A nice new panel made for inside this card. So there are the cards. I am so pleased with them. So this one, again, it's got "Life is a Beautiful Journey." And on the inside, "Adventure Waits, Happy Birthday." And then this one is "You Make the World a Better Place." And on the inside, "Thank you for being part of mine, happy birthday." So this is actually for my friend Amy. She was one of the very first people I met when I moved to Nova Scotia, and became one of my dearest friends, and I love her to bits and pieces. She's also the one that introduced me to my guy. And then this one is for Amy's wife, Lanita. And she loves going on different journeys and adventures and hikes and different things. So this is a perfect sentiment for her. And they both have birthdays this month. So every year they combine their birthdays with the party at their house, and we go every year. It's a lot of fun. So this is for them, that I will tuck in with their gifts tonight. And you may be wondering about what to do for envelopes for these slimline cards. Let me show you what I'm doing. So I just purchased these at Superstore yesterday. Let's see. I'm gonna get a couple of these out. Now, if you have our envelope punch builder that we used to sell, you could make your own envelope. These are 9.4 inches by 4.1 inches. Or 23.9 centimeters, 10.4 centimeters. So this is going to be perfect. I always stamp my envelopes, so I do want to quickly stamp my envelope. You know what? I love the sentiment waterfront, "Friends make the good times better." I'm going to go ahead and stamp that on the front. Just realized that as I was putting my stamp away. So I hope you enjoyed today's video as I made these cards for my two sweet friends, and I hope you were inspired with the techniques. And if you haven't made one of these slimline cards yet, give it a try. They're really fun, and I wish you a great day. Thank you for watching. I appreciate you. Happy stamping!